Ooh, Pelmeni, Pelmeni, where have you been all my life? I love you so much. I am a dumpling guy of the first order. You know, stick some meat or some veg inside a pliant, luscious, velvety skin of some kind and just shove it in my mouth. I love Chinese dumplings. I love Central Asian dumplings. I love classic Russian pelmeni. I mean, you stuff something and boil it or steam. I'm down with it. It is a great time of year to be making them. And what's more, I'm not sure there's a more versatile type of food than a dumpling. Now, take this pelmeni. We're going to get into this in just a little bit when we make them together. But these tiny little dumplings that are stuffed, in this case, with a mixture of veal and pork, you want to do it with cabbage and apples, go ahead. You want to do it with homemade prune paste, go ahead. You want to do it with ground turkey, with cumin and chili powder, go ahead. Because you can take this in a lot of different directions. But this is a classic Russian pelmeni. Oftentimes made with beef, many times made with a combination of veal and pork. You take this little dumpling and you make sheet trays of them and freeze them. And then when they're frozen an hour later, put them into Ziploc bags. You drop them into boiling water and they can be dumplings in an Italian wedding soup, depending on how you flavored them. You can have them for breakfast with applesauce and creme fraiche. You can make ones that are sweet with homemade jam or chocolate inside and serve them as a dessert. You can put your favorite recipe for an Asian force meat inside there and make small little dumplings for next time you have a craving for something with a Sichuan chili crisp on top of it. This technique of putting a meat inside a small little pastry case is something that you can take in 1,000 different directions. It's so versatile. You can pan fry them once they're cooked. Do the Spätzle treatment, right? Where you boil them, drain them, and then toss them in a pan with brown butter and just put a little scorch on top of them, the same way that it's done with a French gnocchi. Incredible food, and I can't wait to show you how to do it because it's so easy. Now, let's start with a couple different things. This is a classic style, a little dill, a little sour cream. Let's call it a day. You want to grate a little horseradish on that? Go right ahead. I don't care. It's fantastic. What I've done, and the recipe is on our website at andrewzimmern.com. Oh, by the way, welcome to AZ Cooks Instagram Live Addiction. I'm addicted to it. Thank you to Shun. Thank you to our good friends at Florida Cognac Rum. We are thrilled to have them as sponsors. But I take an onion. I caramelize it. You don't need to see me caramelize an onion. Mince it, caramelize it. Add some garlic into that. Why don't you do them together? Because you don't want to burn your garlic. Season it with mint and maybe a little chili if you like, salt and pepper. I love dried mint inside my pelmeni. When I got home from my last trip to Russia, I was probably there about 5 years ago, I changed all of my pelmeni recipes because I was in a house on the shores of Lake Sosnova, outside of St. Petersburg, at someone's dasha. And their mother grew tons of mint in the summertime. And she would bundle it up, tie it with string, and dry it inside the house. The house reeked of mint. And she had, garbage buckets full of dried mint. And she would put it on all her meat. She just loved cooking with dried mint. And she made pelmeni for us with the dried mint from the summer before. And it changed my life about how I like to cook my pelmeni. So I make this very simple force meat, which has garlic, caramelized onions. This is veal and pork in equal parts with onion and a nice little sprinkle of the dried mint. The really cool thing, recipe on the website, the really cool part is I struggled for many years to find a pelmeni dough that I was really excited about. And this is an all-purpose dough that I cannot wait for you to make for yourself. And the reason is this. It's really soft and has excellent mouthfeel, but you sacrifice nothing in terms of the tensile strength to hold it together. You ever work with some dough recipes that the dough is so tender. Certain pie crust recipes are like that, that it's really hard unless you make a lot of it. Unless you make a lot of pie crust, it's really hard to work it. You have to have experience and nuance to it. This you'll get right away the first time. In fact, I did not make this batch. Madeline made this batch earlier today, and she had not made this recipe before, and it turned out perfectly. What I love about it is you just get some of that tartness. It has egg in it, so it lightens it up. That protein helps lighten up the dough, but it's really easy to work with. And I just find that an extraordinary combination. And I now use this dough recipe for a lot of different dumplings. So all you want to do is take an orange-sized or baseball-sized piece of this dough. This is a full recipe of it. And just push it out. The more of a circle you can make with your hand, the better. Don't get into analysis paralysis. And then what I do is I just go back and forth with my rolling pin. Now, I happen to be, we were just talking about this, a big fan of these dowels as rolling pins. I even have really small ones so I can make little dumplings or cappelletti or other Italian pastas using a dowel on the side of my kitchen table. This little barrier here from the stovetop is a bit of a bummer for me, so I don't actually go back and forward this way about it. But all you want to do is roll this out, and yes, with the leftover skin, you are going to be able to re-roll it. And all I do is I drape that over my Pelmeni mold. Now, this costs a couple dollars from Amazon. You'll see why this is so perfect in a minute or two. And all I do, you don't want to roll this out too thin, but I lift up the edges. Do you see how I'm lifting up the edge as I go around? And I'm just going to make a little depression inside all those little holes. Just gently with your finger, just make a little depression, right? Now, if you roll this out super, super thin, you're going to have a problem. There are only two mistakes you can make with Pelmeni. Don't roll it out too thin, right? You want it, I don't know, what is that, like a 1/16 of an inch? Whatever that thickness is, works out really, really well. And then what you do is you don't overstuff. You put a tiny little portion, that's probably too much, of meat inside of each depression. Well, the reason is it's coming up so high and it's right by the edge. This is probably perfect. Something that's about 2/3 that size. And this is one of those things that you want to make with another human being that you love very much and just sit there and watch some old episodes of Bizarre Foods on D+ and the new Discovery platform. Ooh, that's a shameless plug. And make a couple trays of these things because they are so much fun to have around. And if you're going to go to the trouble to make the dough, right, you're going to want to make all of the dough circles. You're going to want to use it all for Pelmeni. It does freeze, but I recommend using up the whole batch of Pelmeni meat and Pelmeni dough because they are so delicious. And trust me, if you are like me and you love food, you are going to absolutely destroy a batch of these by yourself, especially during the cold weather months. I wish there was a tiny little scoop that made Pelmeni-sized meatballs, but there isn't. Maybe that's how I will make my fortune. So while I'm filling this up, and then I'm going to stretch another piece of dough, and I'm going to put the cover on this, And then you are going to see one of the most magical things in food happen before your eyes. I cannot get enough of what I am going to show you in a couple of minutes. But while I'm filling this up, questions, comments, criticisms? Anyone having memories of their favorite Pelmeni experience you want to tell me about? You want to ask me about my new show? Oh, sure, I'll talk about that. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, someone is watching your new show in Discovery Plus, they just said.
Oh, fantastic.
But we have a question that says, are Hot Pockets dumplings if you boil them?
Absolutely. Hot Pockets are dumplings if you boil them. A hot dog is a sandwich. And if wine didn't get you drunk, no one would drink it.
Who would you like to cook
I am
with?
such a shit stirrer. I'm sorry. But yeah, of course, if you boiled a Hot Pocket, I think that makes it a dumpling, doesn't it?
Someone's asking, what's the new show?
It's called Family Dinner. It's on Magnolia Network. Available. Preview episodes are on Discovery Plus, the new streaming platform from the good people at Discovery, where, by the way, and this is the coolest thing, Family Dinner is up on Discovery Plus, but there is like a whole new generation of fans. I think it's the coolest thing in the whole world. My email box, my Twitter feed is overrun ever since January 4th when Discovery Plus launched with people who are finding Driven by Food, one of my favorite shows, the Zimmern List, the show I made for Travel Channel that won an Emmy Award last November. Bizarre Foods, hundreds of episodes of Bizarre Foods. And even if you were a big fan of the show, there's probably episodes that you missed, and they're all on Discovery Plus. It's the coolest thing to have one place basically air my entire library. Everything other than my MSNBC show is on Discovery Plus. Even my seasons of Food Network shows. You want to see me cook on Iron Chef? It's on Discovery Plus. You want to see my old Food Network show called All-Star Academy, which I wish I could make more of. That was such a good show. That's on Discovery Plus. So all your Andrew Zimmern stuff is on Discovery Plus.
Before we go to the next question, I want to tell you that Dusty said that you're wrong about wine.
I'm wrong about wine. Well, Dusty would know.
Dusty would know.
She would know.
Can you bake or fry these?
Here's the question for Dusty. The question for Dusty is, has she consumed the wine that I gave her for her anniversary yet? That's the big question. She's a wine show-off, but I don't even think she drinks it. I think she just collects the bottles and stares at them. She has a huge wine cellar that had to be moved to a private storage facility because the insurance company valued it at a ridiculous amount of money. She's one of those wine snob friends of mine.
So can you fry or bake these?
You can fry these, but I would recommend, if you want that texture and flavor, I would recommend that you boil them and then pan fry them because this particular dough crisps up nicely once it's been steamed or boiled.
Who would you like to cook with that you've never had the opportunity to cook with yet?
Oh my God, easiest question in the whole world. And I think I've addressed this before one way or the other. My grandmother was my great inspiration in cooking. She gave me my love of food and taught me about what it meant to entertain people in my home. She cooked for the family, and that's all she cared about, was cooking for the family. And she died when I was in high school. She never got to see me sober up. She died when I was in college. I was an active addict, and I ghosted my family the day of her funeral. And this was a woman who did nothing but beautiful, amazing things for me and loved me very much. And my one regret in life is that she never got to see what I did with the food and the love for food that she gave me. So when everybody says, like, who's your dream dinner guest or whatever, it's like, I just want to cook dinner for my grandmother. That's all I want to do.
How long have you been cooking for?
Since I was 4 or 5 years old with her. Then my mom and dad took over when I got older, and I cooked summers when I was young. I've been cooking since I was 14. My first paycheck was from the Quiet Clam, summer of 1975 in East Hampton, Long Island.
Are you excited for the Disc Golf Pro to start up?
I am so excited for the disc golf season, and I will tell you, I'm thrilled. I'm a celebrity ambassador and have been for the last 7 or 8 years for Innova. And we have some special cool things we're doing this year that does involve a little bit of a food thing, a little pro-am thing. I'm really, really excited about my relationship with Innova. All right, so just drape this over. And then what I do is I set the edge. Just set the edge. And then slowly press down with your fingers. Now, some people, where did our little roller thing go that's with it? The little, I got this wonderful set of Pelmeni makers, and it came with this wonderful tool, and it's such a cheapie. None of these things really rotate very well, but this is actually a very useful tool because you want to get rid of some of this before you start rolling with your rolling pin, because it just is so much easier to get a lot of this dreck out of the way. All right, so we save that dough for another use. And then all we do is gently roll, roll, roll. I'm just using the weight of the roller back and forth and back and forth. And you just slowly apply a little bit more pressure and a little bit more pressure and a little bit more pressure. Can you see the pelmeni starting to take shape?
Is the dough recipe on the website?
Everything is on the website, of course. I wouldn't want to share this with anyone else but you people.
Why do you put flour?
Excuse me?
Why do you put flour on the counter?
I put flour on the counter so the dough doesn't stick. And all you want to do, you can see these little raised ridges on this bigger mold? All I'm doing is revealing the pelmeni, right? And once you see all that silver, you can peel this piece away. I overstuffed a few. No big deal. Tear this away.
What are you making? We have a couple of new people that...
Oh, these are pelmeni, a classic Russian dumpling. My version here, this particular recipe, and it's very versatile, is made with veal and pork, a little caramelized onion inside it. I made my pelmeni so big, I got so far ahead of myself. Hold on one second. This is hysterical. This is a first. I got so carried away and made them so big that I busted some of them. But all you got to do is push your dumplings through, and you wind up with these. Yeah, these are too big. But easy to save. It's just food. Anyway, just push your pelmeni through. Normally, do you see how these ones broke? Because the dough stuck to there, right? You want to make sure that you get rid of those. You know what I love making a mistake? I love making a mistake. Number one, because that's how I learn. But more importantly than that, it's great for people to see that it's just food. Don't get all like bent out of shape about it. So you make the next batch a little differently, right? But doesn't mean, we lost a couple of dumplings, sure. But it's just dough and meat, right? Just work your fingers in from the ends and push those dumplings through, right? Super, super, super handy. These are too fat by about half. I got carried away. But I'm going to show you how, with just a little bit of love, you can just sneak all of these right through. And the reason I'm looking at the other side is the ones that have busted where the meat busted through, those are no good, but all the rest are good. So we lost 2 or 3, and all the rest are fine. They're just a little too big. Yeah?
What's the most pelmenis you've eaten at a time?
3 plates like that worth. I really love them, but they're rich. They're rich. I do like making ones with where you saute chopped cabbage and onion and caraway seed and put a little bit of crispy duck skin in there. That's a fantastic pelmeni. I love ones with beef and garlic in them. This may be my favorite, though.
Can you make them by hand, or do you need that?
Oh my gosh, what a great question, and thank you for reminding me. I was so caught up in my issue du jour here. I'm going to set this aside for a second. So let's drop these into a large volume of rapidly boiling salted water. And I want to show you, here's one that I made, and here's one that we made earlier. It's about half the size and pops right out, right? So too big, absolutely perfect. But people who don't have molds, you just tear little bits of dough, right? And on a little floured surface, right? You just want to roll out a small disc, right? So you can take little pieces, and once you figure out what your size is going to be, you can just roll them all out like that. You can use a little cutter. I'm just going to roll this two more times. Just get the dough a little bit thinner. And what you do is you make, and I don't know how many people out there love making tortellini, but again, the only mistake that you can make is overfilling. Let's see if I've learned my lesson. Very pliable dough. Seal with your fingers. Because there's buttermilk and egg in there, you don't need water or anything. And then you do what's called the tortellini fold. Fold them around your finger and just make that shape. And that is a super easy way to do it without a mold. Super, super easy. Oh, these are
Would you put seafood inside, like
oh,
shrimp or something?
Absolutely. I was playing around with this. I knew that we were going to make this recipe, and Lunar New Year started last week, and I was making dumplings and hand-cut noodles from the dough, and so I had leftover force meat with shrimp and pork and Chinese chives and all the, soy sauce and ginger and garlic, and I put them inside a batch of pelmeni dough, and it was absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. All right. Questions? More comments? Nobody wants to give me a bunch of shit for blowing the first batch of pelmeni and overstuffing them. And I said out loud, there's only 2 mistakes that you can make, one of which is overstuffing them. And I say it about everything. Spring rolls, ravioli, you name it. Anything that's filled, the only mistake you can make is overstuffing them. And I overstuffed mine.
What's the most useless talent you have?
The most useless, I am, and I've won quite a few contests at it. I have won a lot of amateur talent contests, especially when I was younger, doing Hawaiian nose humming. Perhaps you've heard this tune. That's Tiny Bubbles by Don Ho. That may be the most useless thing that I could ever think of doing. I have a very large skill set. It includes Hawaiian nose humming. You're welcome.
If you had to change your name, what would it be?
If I had to change my name, I've actually that's never occurred to me. So I've never thought about that. Although, because names, you can spell it however you want and pronounce it however you want because it's your name, it would probably be a mixture of symbols and numbers, but I would pronounce it Steve. And you would spell it 1 asterisk, exclamation mark, 4, period.
Dusty says, Arnold Ziffel.
Why would you say that out loud? Dusty and I have worked together since I started working. And there was a point in time, well, I can't even really say this, but no, sure I can. There were times when I have had to not use my real name for registering in a hotel. And I use the name Arnold Ziffel because that way I can remember it. From the show Green Acres. Oh, I mean, look at that. I mean, that is beautiful. One more.
What's your favorite Olympic sport to watch?
Oh my God, I love the Olympics. Absolutely love the Olympics. I love downhill slalom. And now there's so much cool stuff. I think the answer is this. When it gets down to the end and it's the finals of anything, the skill set is so massive that it really doesn't matter to me what sport I'm watching. If you asked me like, oh, do you enjoy short track speed skating teams? I'd be like, no, I don't. But then you watch it at the Olympic level and you're just like, oh my God, it's amazing. So it's easy to say things like, oh, the ice hockey championships or downhill skiing or some of the track and field events like the 100-yard dash where there's so much of a buildup. But anything, even the pole vault, if there's competition at the end, it's like the gymnastics stuff. I mean, I can't do any of that. I don't even understand how the human body can do that. And yet these incredible athletes, I'm just snipping some chives. Yes, I wrap them in wet paper toweling, and then I just put them in a Ziploc bag. They last longer that way. I'm going to mince a little dill as well.
When you salt the water, like how much do you put in it?
Until it tastes like seawater. You want it salty.
A lot of people are commenting on your shirt.
Oh, I collect old rock and roll shirts. I have some really cool ones, and even some from some shows that I've been at. But this is my Poison Who Let the Cat Out of the Bag tour. Yeah. Or sorry, Look What the Cat Dragged In. This 86, 87. It's when I had a lot of hair and was really into hair bands. I'm just kidding.
Favorite Poison song?
I don't even want to get into that right now. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Yes, go on.
What's the best or worst prank you've played on someone?
I just actually talked about this yesterday, and it's going to go in a YouTube hot sauce eating truth or dare episode that we shot yesterday to put on YouTube, where I outed myself on something that I did to a writer-producer friend in Mongolia.
What's your perfect burger?
Oh, I'm actually a black and blue, hard sear, nice crust, rare, high quality beef, toasted buttered bun, slice of tomato, or plain. That to me, I want to taste the beefy char and a great piece of bread.
What are your guilty pleasures?
Uh, Pizza rolls, lots of ice cream, Jenny's, Grater's, Salt and Straw, Izzy's, Milk Jam, some local places here. I mean, you name it, I'm down for it. Gas station pizza, and when I'm in the South, gas station fried chicken and fried chicken livers. Let's see, what else for guilty pleasure? What else do I eat that's a guilty pleasure? Jersey Mike subs. I have at least 2 a week. I can't get away from the Italian stallion one or whatever they call it. We here in Minnesota, sandwich shops that do a traditional East Coast grinder style Italian hero, few and far between. I just want to show you this. A dollop of sour cream, some chives and dill. Just get a little bit on there. Oh my God, that is just so sick good. Please remember, don't overstuff, but when you make your force meat, drop a little bit of the force meat, just like this. Just take a little bit, right? Drop it into the boiling water, like a meatball. Why would you do that? Can anyone guess?
See what it tastes like. Madeline, don't give it away.
That's your one opportunity to taste that for salt, right? Salt and pepper, yeah, you can put some on afterwards, but isn't it great if all the seasoning was already inside? If you cook in salt water, your dough is going to be seasoned, so make sure that your force meat is seasoned as well.
I know we've said it before, but will this recipe be shared? Keep asking.
Every single recipe we ever do, we put on our website, andrewzimmern.com. Lots of cool stuff there. Poke around. You'll find a lot of slick recipes. And this is Pelmeni, Pelmeni.
What are your favorite citrus recipes?
So funny you asked. It is the height of citrus season. Last night I had blood orange sherbet. 3 scoops, I mean monster scoops. I couldn't stop eating it. I love big piles of citrus. I buy citrus online from different citrus farms all around the country. I'm kind of obsessed with it. From pomelos to, sumos to all different types of mandarins, blood oranges, Meyer lemons, you name it. And we actually this week are putting a whole bunch of my citrus recipes from lemon curd to duck à l'orange to an orange zest caramel scented flan recipe. Flan is a Spanish custard, Vicky, you might be familiar with. And we're putting that up tomorrow?
Today. We put it up.
Oh, we already put it up. We already put it up. I knew it was happening at some point. Today's Thursday. The week is just messing with my head.
Are Juicy Lucy's overrated?
No. What is wrong with you?
How long do you boil these for?
Let them float, count to 90, and pull them. Are Juicy Lucy's overrated? First of all, a Juicy Lucy, for those that don't know, is spelled Jucylucy. There are 2 restaurants here in town, Minneapolis, that both lay claim to inventing the Juicy Lucy. I happen to believe it was invented at Matt's Bar, but that's a whole different ballgame. And it's 2 thin patties, sealed at the edges with cheese stuffed inside. And they cook them until they're well done and the cheese inside is runny and molten hot. And if you think pizza mouth, that burn when you eat pizza too fast, is bad, Juicy Lucy mouth, where the cheese squirts out, it goes to the sides and it gets you on the side of the cheeks, traumatic. So a real experienced Juicy Lucy eater, such as myself, will order two, and then sit and wait for a while. You do not cut them in half. You don't want it to run. You just want it to cool. The cheese will stay runny and hot. Let it wait 4 or 5 minutes. Eat your fries. Pound down another Diet Coke, and then dive into the Juicy Lucy. They're fantastic.
Where did you learn how to make this recipe?
Oh gosh, trial and error. So when I was growing up, there were all these Russian restaurants in New York City that my father would take me to, and I knew what pelmeni was, but we never made them at home. Then I went to Russia for the first time in 2010, I think, 2009. 11, first time was 2008. And I had pelmeni over there and actually made pelmeni with a whole bunch of different people in different settings. One ended up being included in one of our shows. And then I came back and just went right into the kitchen because I had to learn how to make this for myself.
What's your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert is a really nice Cuban cigar after a heavy-duty makeout sesh on the couch. I like fruity desserts. I like tart, sweet, and light. I don't want something heavy. If I have a light dinner, I will eat a pint of ice cream on the couch watching a good movie. That's a different thing. I don't count that as dessert. I count that as late night snack. But if I have a meal and I'm at a table, I like something that is tart and sweet and cleansing. Diane Mua, who is the pastry chef for Soigné Hospitality's group of restaurants that includes Demi and Spoon and Stable, nominated for a ton of James Beard Awards, really talented pastry chef. She made a dessert several menu iterations ago, about a year and a half ago, that was a brittle, paper-thin, grapefruit perfumed pavlova, and stuffed inside were a whole variety of segments of citrus fruits and citrus fruit syrups, and then also tucked inside was a scoop of grapefruit, salted grapefruit sorbet. Think like Paloma without the booze, right? I mean, just mildly salted to bring out the sweetness in the grapefruit. And I actually got up after I told her, I said, that's my perfect dessert. Because texturally, with the pavlova, the crispy meringue, and all of that deliciousness in there, that, to me, it was like every flavor of Starburst, but in a elegant dessert. I love that.
What's a food that you've never tasted that you want to try?
All of these questions, is that reporter from People Magazine asking all this? I literally, 3 of these questions I was asked today in an interview. No. I've tasted, I just want to go back and try different versions of things. You know, it's like, how many restaurants can I try Shenzhen Bao in Shanghai? The answer is 400, right? But I've only tried them in 8. So I just want to go back more places and try more versions of things and see what I'm missing. Everyone has their own style, and that's super, super important. So I just want to try more of the things that I think I've been missing, right? And then the best things that I've eaten have been things that I didn't know existed. So when I was in Nicaragua, I was in a very small town in a jungle market late at night. This is where villagers come from miles away. Everyone sets up a little food stall and everyone comes in, and it's nighttime, the temperatures are cooler, and people trade fruits and leather goods and homemade musical instruments, and you can buy a TV from, the TV guy shows up once every 6 months with 4 or 5 TVs, people buy them. But some of the grandmothers there had, I recognize the smell of chanfaina, which is an organ meat stew. And it's cooked down with lots of chilies and tomatoes and onions, and it's just absolutely delicious. And I went over to the chanfaina, and I asked her what the portion size was, because I didn't want a whole tray of it, I just wanted a cup of it. And I noticed there were these white tennis balls floating in the small tennis balls, more like ping pong balls, floating in the soup. And I said, what are they? And she tried to explain it to me in her native tongue, which was not Spanish, it was an Amerindian dialect. And I turned to one of our translators, and he He said they're lizard eggs. And they were lizard eggs that she was poaching on top there. There's no shell on certain lizards don't have an egg with a shell. The shell hardens after they've been sitting out for a while when the lizard is incubating them. So the ones if they shoot a lizard for the meat, big lizards, and there's lots of eggs inside, they put them on top of the chanfaina, and it's a white leathery skin, and you suck the yolk and the rest of the white out. And it was delicious with the spicy, organy, livery stew that was with it. I had never seen that before, didn't know it wasn't in any of the guidebooks, and I loved it. And we went back the next night because the jungle market was on weekends, and I ate another bowl of it because it was just so delicious. So it's always the thing that I don't know is there that I want to eat.
First vacation after COVID. First vacation after COVID, where would you go? Or what would you do?
I'm trying to figure out with my son, going to like Costa Rica, Guatemala, then an island, and then home, something like that. I just want to make a big loop. And I love Central America. It's just a magical place for me. It's much safer than people realize. I think it's important that we show our faces in those countries. I think it's really important that we lift up the stories of the people in those countries. I've made a lot of friends in Costa Rica and Guatemala, and I want my kid to see Guatemala, especially Antigua, one of my favorite cities on earth. Something like that, hot, beachy, and all the rest of that. Then I want to go alone with no one else, like back to Mongolia, somewhere where I literally can be alone for like 2 weeks, me and a horse.
Have you had chocolate-covered grasshoppers?
I have ripped little baby chocolate-covered grasshoppers from their mother's wombs and eaten them. Last question.
Who is the most interesting person you've met and talked with?
The most interesting person that I've met and talked with, the Dalai Lama. Easy answer.
All right, that was the last question.
Oh, fantastic. First of all, he's a really cool dude, super smart. I did the dumbest thing of all time, and for people who haven't seen the movie Caddyshack, there's that great Bill Murray scene where he's talking about meeting the Dalai Lama and what he would ask them, and he would say, what's the meaning of life, Lama? And so, of course, this is running through my head, and I knew he was going to be in attendance at this thing, and it was a fundraiser, and I was lucky enough, I was a guest of someone. I was at the head table, and the Dalai Lama was at the table. And I'm just so fascinated by the Dalai Lama, and I'd read a lot about him, and I've read a lot of his writings. And so I was like, don't ask the question, don't ask the question, don't ask the question. And at one point, the conversation is going back and forth, and I actually asked a version of that, which was, what's the one thing you're convinced I don't know that you'd like to teach me? Which was like the dumbest, it just came out of my mouth. And he ended up telling me a really fascinating story. I will tell it next week. Vicky, let's write that down. I'll tell the Dalai Lama story next week because we don't have time, but it's a really amazing story, and it's all about the bandit and the dog. And it's something that actually, this is 24 years ago that I had this experience, and it's actually something I think about every day, and it's part of my spiritual practice, so it's really cool to share it with you next week. Hey, I did want to read you something. I got a really heartbreaking email, but it was also really life-affirming. And this is it. I wanted to share with you that last year, when Vina's mutia recipe, which was a dumpling, was picked by your team, Vicky, Madeline, myself, as a winner in the Grandmother's Recipe Contest, which Vina won. Vina loved watching the video. We watched it together when I saw her on her 90th birthday, so she would watch it a lot. Interestingly enough, What she was really surprised by was the fact that I, or her other 3 grandkids she was close to, were even paying attention to the food she cooked, that we would even remember the dishes. We talked a lot about the other favorites she made for us. Vina passed away this past weekend. My heart hurts, but I'm glad we bonded again over food because of the recipe contest. When my mom returned from Kenya in September after being stranded there for 9 months, Vina sent back some recipes she had picked out for me. My 9-year-old and I are going to cook each one of them in the cooking weeks. Thank you for giving me this reconnection with Vina. And it was signed by one of her grandchildren. We kid a lot and we treat these little Instagram live things like they're trifles. And they are. They're meant just to be an entertaining diversion and cook something. But you never know when, like, we decide to do, like, oh, let's do a grandmother's recipe cooking contest, the way that it can bond families together and how meaningful it can be for some people. And I want you to know I don't take that responsibility lightly, despite my sometimes flippant attitude. So I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.